Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome once again to yet another episode of our series of discussions and lessons wherein we are discussing and learning about the 40 Ahaadeeth of Imaam Annawawee. And we are still on the first hadith, which is about the sincerity of intention. We had a look on the narrator of this hadith, who is Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa of Islam. And today we are going to begin looking at the text of the hadith. The hadith begins by saying, "Innamal a'malu bin-niyyat." This is an extremely comprehensive, rich, and beneficial hadith. Innamal a'malu bin-niyyat means that all actions are judged by their intentions. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi selected Innamal a'malu bin-niyyat as his first hadith and introduction to the whole collection of Sahih Bukhari Sharif. And this hadith appears in 7 different chapters or 7 different places within various chapters of Sahih al-Bukhari. In the Arabic language, the word innama is used for restriction, meaning only. So in the first instance of this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has explained to us that verily actions are only judged by their intentions. Our intention is immediately brought to the fact that our intentions need to be correct and pure. Therefore, the one who is seeking, the one who is listening, and also the one who is reading the book corrects his intention solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It reminds the author of the sincerity or of sincerity, and also warns the reader that good and noble deeds inculcated by the hadith found therein will only bear fruit if there is sincerity attached to their intentions, and will be worthless if the motive is not sincere. Now, the other aspect of the hadith is about hijrah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum were often subjected to abuse and persecution by the mushrikeen or the polytheists of Makkah Mukarramah. Many Muslims were killed and tortured. Sumayya bint Khabbab radiallahu anha was ripped apart with a spear placed in the intimate parts of her body. Bilal ibn Rabah radiallahu anhu was placed on the intense heat of the desert and whipped and beaten. And even Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was not spared from such abuse, with the entrails of a sacrificed camel thrown on him while he was praying at the Kaaba. A time came when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to leave the land of Kufar and journey to the land of Iman. After receiving divine direction, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam stood on a hillock and he turned his face towards Makkah, saying that, "O Makkah, I love you. Had it not been for your people, that is the mushrikeen, I would never have left you." The Muhajirun, the Muslims who made hijrah, the emigrant Muslims, along with their great sacrifices, secretly began leaving Makkah Mukarramah and embarked on hijrah, that is migration, to Medina Munawwara. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had kept tremendous reward for those who made this hijrah. Among those who made the hijrah was one particular Sahabi, radiallahu anhu, who wanted to marry a woman named Qais. But she refused to marry him unless he would migrate from Mecca to Medina. Therefore, he migrated in order to marry her. And because his intention was not for Islam nor for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was only rewarded with a worldly thing. But if he had made the intention solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his reward would have been much better and much greater. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum were so sincere and kind that they overlooked and concealed the mistakes of others. And therefore, the name of this particular Sahabi radiallahu ta'ala anhu was never mentioned. So the importance of intention or niyyah, ikhlas means to free something. It is sincerity. It is the freeing of one's niyyah or intention from all impurities in order to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, exclusively for his pleasure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the noble Quran that ikhlas niyyah or sincere intentions is a precondition of acceptance of good deeds. He mentions in Surah Al-Bayyinah, the 98th surah of the Quran, the 5th ayah, that وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah, being sincere to Him in religion. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned in a hadith that inna Allah la yanzuru ila suwarikum wa amwalikum walakin yanzuru ila qulubikum wa a'malikum. That verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at your appearance or wealth, but rather He looks to your hearts and deeds, that is actions. This is a hadith that is recorded in Sahih Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is well aware of what is hidden in the hearts. Free your heart and free your intention from everybody else besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There must not be a speck of insincerity in our heart. The nature of our intentions should be purely and solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any action we do must be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in conformity with the Sharia of Islam. A righteous man used to address himself and say, "Oh nafs, inculcate sincerity within yourself and be pure, so that you may be freed and liberated from the fire." Actions depend on intentions. If the intention is good and for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the action will also be good and acceptable. Otherwise, if the intention is deprived, the action will also be deprived and rejected in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The excellence of niyyah is such a thing that there is no pretense in it. Thus it is better than action, because in action there is possibility of pretense of piety. Whenever you do a good deed, you should purify your intention beforehand. After that, if there remains any doubt, it should be understood that this doubt is from shaitan, and in this way he is obstructing from doing good. From this it is clear that the intention of a mu'min believer is better than his action. We end here. We'll pick up from here in our next episode. Until we meet again in the next episode, wherein we continue our discussion on sincerity. جعلنا الله وإياكم من الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه وأشكركم على حسن استماعكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May the Almighty Allah grant us all beneficial knowledge.